Hello there, everybody. I'm Chang. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to share a video of how I mixed a worship cover song I did recently called Waymaker. I want to start creating videos similar to this to help anyone who is interested in learning how to mix worship songs. This will be my perspective and how I put all my audio together and create the videos that you see here on my YouTube channel. Growing up, I was always inspired by other musicians, but I've always wondered how people make music and create the videos. You don't really get to see behind the scenes and how they do it. So there's no way to learn. So I want to start sharing my experiences and my knowledge with you, and I hope that it helps you. This is what my YouTube channel is all about. Through music, I want to inspire you, encourage you, and help you use your gifts to glorify God. Whether it's singing, playing guitar, playing bass, or you're the mix guy on the console at church, or you do the video editing at church, or at home, or you want to create YouTube videos like this. Whatever it is, there are tons of ways to be a light and be a voice for Jesus. And let all that we do be for the glory of God. Psalm 102:2 says, "Let all that I am praise the Lord, and may I never forget the good things He has done for me." It's one of my favorite Bible verses. I hope this helps you and encourages you. So in this video, it will just be the mixing stage. There's a stage where you record and then you edit it, make sure everything's lined up, and then you mix it, which what I'm going to show you here, and then there's the mastering stage. But today I will be showing you my mix stage and what plugins I use, the tools, and how I get my instruments and what I'm using, so you can kind of see behind the scene of everything I use. So I'm going to start off with my Mixdown plugin. So this plugin is the plugin I put at the mix bus, so I run everything into it. So therefore, when I'm making decisions, or with EQ or compression or whatever it is, this kind of alternates it. So therefore, it's not every mix I do is not always the same. It's always kind of different as I'm making decisions. I like that I can be more creative and not always rely on the same EQ or the same compression settings. This kind of changes it. So this is my mix bus plugin. It's from Waves, and Chris Loralgi is the mixing engineer behind this plugin, and he's one of my favorite mix engineers. This is a plugin from his workflow. I leave everything at 0. When I run through this plugin, I always try to get about -3 dB of gain reduction. It kind of lets me know that I'm getting everything how the plugin was designed to make. So I leave everything at 0, and I use pretty much my -3 dB gain reduction as kind of like my gain structure. So pretty much I have a music bus where I run all my instruments to, and then I'll send all the instruments into my mix bus, which has everything, my vocals and everything, my reverbs, and then I'll send that into what I call my Mixdown bus. But that's what this plugin is on, and the reason I do that is that way I'm able to feed my signal here. I can add more going into this plugin instead of using this input, because it doesn't sound as good as if I leave it at 0 and I just feed it here. So it's also recommended from Chris Loralgi to run it like that. So that's how I run that plugin. And the reason I run a music bus is because I also want to be able to carve about 1700 a hole. I feed my vocals through this, and it compresses around this frequency the rest of all my instruments, so it cuts a hole from but I only do it in the mids. That's really important. Instead of doing the whole entire stereo spectrum, I just do the mids, so it cuts a hole, because that's usually where the lead vocal sits. It's right in the middle, so everything else on the sides still sounds the same. So that's my mix bus. So pretty much in this track, I have my drums, and what I use Easy Drummer 2. There's also Superior Drummer that gives you more flexibility to really alternate your sound, but I'm all about working as fast as possible, especially being a one-man show, I guess, where you have to do everything yourself, because it's usually there's the recording engineer, he does his part, and then he sends it to someone who edits it, and then they send it to the mix engineer, and then they send it to the mastering, and I'm doing all of that. It's nothing to brag, but it's just what I'm trying to say is that it's a lot of work and it's really time consuming. So I'm always looking at plugins that could give me great sound really quick, and I can just alternate. And instead of playing, trying to make sure this sounds good, I'm able to just to throw plugins on it and just change it to get a good flavor out of it. So I use Easy Drummer, Easy Drummer 2. If it's a virtual instrument, it's a if you don't know what it is, you can go and Google it. It's an awesome plugin. That's what I use. And then for my bass, I use Bass Fingers from Waves. I play it on my MIDI keyboard, and then I adjust, the notes and the velocity. It's a pretty awesome plugin. But that's what I use for my MIDI instruments. So I use the drums and the bass. And then for my keyboard, I use Minigran. It replicates or emulates a grand piano. And for my pads, I use Expand. It's one of a stock plugin on Pro Tools, and you can get a lot of different sounds, but I usually save a preset of how I want. And then, yeah, that's all my MIDI instruments. So pretty much how I start a worship song is that I listen to it as a whole. First I get, the drum levels, and I, make sure it sounds good, and then I send it all to one bus here. And that way I can control everything with just one fader. And so once I do that, I don't do this is parallel compressed. I don't do any of this yet. So that's kind of usually when I add later, so I can kind of figure out like how much of I need. So I grabbed all the instruments, I start listening to it. I do what they call a rough mix, try to figure out what needs to go what, and I kind of pan them where I think they should go, and I kind of get the volume where I like it. Just a rough mix, nothing is going to be like serious yet. Sometimes you want to be able to see the mix as a whole, because no one listens to music in solo. So you listen to the whole so you can get a vibe and kind of see, okay, what needs work and what do I need to add here. Or sometimes if, for me, I like just to add stuff because it's like coloring a picture, It doesn't need red, but I like red, so I just add red, and there's no rules to mixing audio. So now I'm going to show you the plugins I use. So for drums, so once I do a rough mix, I usually run to my drums, because for me, the voice is the most important, and then there's a lot of different opinions in what should be louder. For me, I love drums. I love a fat snare, and I like a drum to be popping. It's rhythm for me. And then I like my electric guitars to kind of be, but I grew up on like Hillsong, where there's just tons of electric guitars. So that's kind of how I like to hear things. So I start off with the drums, and this is what I'm using. So for the kick, this plugin right here it emulates the SSL console, and I love this plugin. This is the most musical plugin I found, and it sounds amazing. But only problem with this plugin is that it eats a lot of CPU. So I only run it on pretty much the tracks that I think are going to be like really up front. So which is my kick, my snare, and my vocals. So yeah, so this is my settings for my kick. I boost some low end, cut off some some boxiness, and I cut off a little bit of the low end and some top end just to create some space. I add some top end and I compress it. So let me put it so you can just hear my drums. Yep, so as you can see, it's just a little bit of compression around -2. I like to do series compression. I add like different layers. I don't like to use them like just smashing it. I only do that when I'm parallel compressing. But this is my settings of how for drums, and then I like to use the Chris Lord LG has a signature series plugins, and they're all kind of set up like this, and I love it because you could just get such good sounds quickly. But I found that you can't just this can't be your only plugin if the audio you're using needs some cleanup or whatever it is. So usually if it's like Easy Drummer where the tracks sound awesome already, then I just run this on it. But some of the other tracks, when I do use it, I like to clean up first and then throw this kind of towards the end. So this is where I like to add the gate here, a little bit of compression, add some subs. This was nothing. I just use it to monitor it, and I parallel compress it. And this is me smashing it. The supercharger sounds pretty awesome. Gets the kick to really be pumping. Yep. And then for the snare, this is my settings here. You know, I'll boost some top end, cut some low end. This, I didn't explain this, but this adds some distortion from the analog console, some grit, and I like it. And then you can see compressing it, barely compressing a little bit. You know, I compress it for the sound, because usually virtual instruments, they don't really need to compress, but I kind of do it just to get the sound out of it, add some color. Yep, and here you can see same plugin, the snare settings, and I just add lower just to give the snare a really fat sound. You can see here I add a lot of low end on the snare to give the snare a really fat sound, because I like a fat snare where it just pops in your face. Then I got rid of some low ends. Sometimes, you know, I think there were some, that snare adds some bleed to make it sound more natural. So sometimes the kick gets through. I think that's what I did there. So this is snare bottom. I didn't do much here, just cut some low end. I think that's all I did actually. Yeah, just cut some low end and compressed it a little bit. And then I like to add reverb on the tail, which is the snare bottom. But when I did parallel compression, what I did here is that I didn't once you add reverb here, it adds it directly on the tracks. You can't send it out. It's gonna send part of the reverb. So what I did is I duplicated it here, and that way I shut off the reverb, so I could send both the top and the bottom snare dry into I call it snare delay, but it's basically a snare reverb. I didn't really fix that, but yeah. So I'm able to send that to the snare delay, and I'm also going to be able to send it to the parallel bus of the snare, so I can really not get the reverb, but just get a dry signal. But so that's what I'm doing to parallel compress. This is the CLA 76. I use this on a lot of instruments. I think it sounds really awesome. But yep, it's really cracking it. And then Abbey Roads, this is what I'm using for the snare reverb, just to get snare its own space. If you can hear, there you go. So it adds more low end, so it sounds, you know, reverb is like a sauce. You know, you add on top of it to add more. If it's too high, you add a reverb that's real low end. If it's too low, you add some other time to give some shine, kind of color it. So that's what I use reverb for. And then, you know, the hi-hat, you know, I boosted some highs so I can, you know, get some, put some highs so I can get some of the cymbals to come through. And clean it up, and then add here some more high end. I spanked it to give it, you know, give it a little compression. Toms, without this plugin, the tom sounds kind of, you know, I like boomy toms too. Really like Elevation Worship, where you can just hear it just boom. So I add a lot of it. And this gate, I realize when you add a lot of low end, some of the low end kind of builds up and it kind of sustains, goes woo. So this gate helps clean it up. So without it, you see, it just sounds really like light. It sounds good, but it just sounds real light. But like I said, you know, like I said, I like to use these plugins as color. So yeah, so those are my floor toms. I did parallel compress the floor tom, not the rack tom, just because I just felt like it was kind of disappearing a little bit in the track. And then the overheads, and they have 3 ambient mics. I just got rid of some low end just so they can clean up a little bit. And for the overheads, just add some roof and lower, and that's pretty much what I did. Yeah, so that's that. And then I send it here to and that's I like to use, this is a mixed bus compressor, but I use it here because I like this compressor. Like I said, there's no rules, so I threw it on here, add a little compressor, then I threw the C6 multi-band compressor, and I just use, you know, a preset. Presets are awesome, and just kind of play around with the threshold, and then that's that. And then I send a signal from this, and I use the 76 to parallel. So this all sounds. Yep, and then that's what I compress it with. I feel like this compressor really gives it a really punchy pumping sound. I think pumping sounds awesome for drums. And then for this one, I use a CLA mix down again, but I just use completely just a drive. The drive gives it grit, and it does compress it too. So. Really subtle, but as you can see, it adds a little more energy. And then this is my drum reverb. So for the whole entire track, my drum, I use the same reverb. You know, when I did this track, I wanted this track to sound live, as if I'm playing in a big stadium and there's people singing. So that's what I love. I love live performances. I would choose a live sound over studio any day. But so I did this song. I wanted to get that sound. So I used this Soft 2 plugin, and I added just a stage. So as you can see, but I only sent my ambient mics to the reverb, so therefore I didn't send the whole track to the reverb. But that's how I get my drums. That's definitely how I get my drums. All right, so for bass, you know, I use bass fingers. Yeah, so I use that, and then I add the chroma tape to give it more of an analog sound. And then I add the CLA bass, and this plugin is awesome, especially this on sub to spank it. Yep, for me when I use these plugins, I always turn out the output so it's not just louder and you think it's better. I always try to match the levels, so you can see what the plugin's actually doing. But anyways, once I do that, what I did was that I committed this source. That way it's not playing through and not eating up my CPU. And I send it here. So I add, what I did was I add a submarine. And this adds really like low end. And then what I did was that what I like to do is that I sidechain the kick. So how this works is that I'll send a signal from the kick to sidechain it. I'll send the kick into the bass right here, the bass kick. So what it does is that when the kick comes and it kicks, you can see it lowers it. So it lowers it about around 80. So therefore, the kick and the bass are not fighting each other. You can kind of get a space for it when it plays. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I do for the bass. And then as the track goes, I parallel to get to, because I felt like I wanted to get more of the strings in the click. That way I can feel the plug. I don't like boomy bass. I kind of like a bass where you can kind of hear the strings. I paralleled it with the CLA 76, and then I just made sure that I add that to the same source, so it's compressing it both sides. So that's that. And then these are my acoustic instruments, like my pads and everything. This is just a committed version. I committed it, and I did automation. But what I did here is show you guys each one how it sounds. This is my pad. I got rid of some low end, add a lot of top end, cut around some low mids to kind of clean it up a little bit, compress it a little bit just to get a more consistent sound. And then once I did that, I cut off a lot of low end, make sure the top end is not killing. And then I made some space for the sides. So I did this right here. So basically you can cut off the side. Here you can cut the sides. And I did this to cut some mids to make some space for the electric guitar. As you can see here, about 120, that's kind of where the electric guitar lives. And I just did on the sides because I panned the electric guitars to the side so you can get that sound. The keyboard, Same thing, add some top end right around here. I love the, I'm a big attack person, so I want to be able to hear the strings pop on the bass. Want to hear the keyboard, you can hear the the bang on it. So that's what I do here, and yep, so you can hear that. I think you just hit the bang bang. Yeah, so that's what I did there, and then I compress a little bit with the preset or piano. Just kind of set it on. Just kind of chose how much I want to gain it, give it more consistent sound. And I cut off some low end to make room for the bass. I'm always kind of low end to make room for the bass, as you can see. And then these are my acoustics. So I did with acoustics, I use this plugin. I use the light version. You guys can see this is my settings. I cut off some. There's always a lot of low mids or medium around 1K to 250 around there. There's a lot of muffleness in the acoustic guitar that I'm always cutting off. Compress it a little bit, and then I like this one. I like this compressor. It really, it's really lightly, but it really cleans it up a little bit. But that's what I did for the right and the left. The only thing I did different was that, let's see, I added more top end on this one. You can see the EQ settings are a little bit different. But to make it really different, I added this. So you can hear this plugin. Just gives it more of a high-end mid boost. Just to differentiate the two guitars, because they don't sound the same. Yep, and that's pretty much, and I just cut off some more low end. That's what I did for my acoustic guitars. And then for the electric, but what I did was that pretty much, once I do that, I'll commit it, and then I'll send it over here. So that way, I just did this for the sake of showing you guys what I did for the instrument. Same thing here. This is my electric guitars. So I run through them. I played through my my Telecaster, and then I run a camera tape just to give it more of an analog sound. And then these, I run all the Waves. Waves GTR. They have a set of like plugins where you can run them through a pedal. As you can see, there's gates, overdrive, EQ, and then it has an amp here. But yeah, those are my settings. So I get the sound. There's cut some low end. Yep. And then what I do after that, I'll send it through a bus so I can get them both. And then I use CLA signature plugins, guitar. But this one, I did nothing. I just threw it on because, I don't know, it just gives it a more clean, more smooth tone. It's run straight through the plugin as a bus, and then I just lowered some mid-range. But as I was doing that, I figured, this guitar had a lot of like mid-range, and it wasn't really cutting through, so that's why I cut the pads so I can get more attack out of it. So like I said, I love attack, so that's what I did. And I run all my instruments through the same thing, the stage reverb. So for reverb, for me, what I did is that I use it more for a as a glue. Some people use it to like a sauce, so you can put it on like a hall on a guitar, and a room for the voice, and a chamber for drums, and all different sounds. But for this one, I wanted to make it simple, and I just use it as a glue. I had one giant place, as if I was playing in a giant large stadium. So that's what I did. I just cut off a lot of low end. So that's what I did for the electric guitars. So for vocals, so in this song, I wanted to create an environment as if there was people singing. So I did crowd vocals. So throughout the song, it's just singing just like as if a crowd would sing it. But what I did is that, I add a Waves tune to kind of give it, a different. I use a little bit different settings to kind of give them the sound a little bit different. Cleaned up a lot of low end, cleaned up some of the, these are my settings. Compressed it a little bit so it sounds more. Because if you're far away in a crowd, they sound really consistent. It's not going to be like up and close, up and close. So, well, not up and close, like close and far away. So it's like you can so I compressed it pretty much, and then I added another compressor, and I just kind of did the same thing, maybe tweaked it a little bit. But the biggest thing that was different was this Waves ADT. So this plugin is awesome. It helps me just sing it once, and I'm able to double it. So pretty much what I did is that it creates another double of the voice. But what is cool is that it's not where it's consistently in one spot. It'll make it slower and faster and slower and faster, so it creates this doubling effect, which is awesome. So what I did was that on this track I made it to the left, and I made the double to the right, and I did the opposite on the other side, so it creates this crowd sound. Yep. And then at the end I just add, you know, this the signature series, just to clean it up a little bit, add some top end spread. It kind of gives it, you know, more of a space. It's really subtle, but then I clean up some low end, and then this is what I did for the backup vocal. Miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. All right, so that's my backup vocals. I would go in and I use Waves Tune to kind of align the vocals to be really straight and to make it sound more studialized. Then, you know, I clean up the top end, and just kind of clean it up a little bit. And usually when I mix everything, I don't really solo them. Well, I do solo them to kind of carve out stuff that I found that's really bad on the vocals. But once I clean it up, I try to listen to it as a whole. Because like I said, no one listens to, you know, music separate. But for the sake of show you, I'm soloing everything just so you can kind of hear the different what I'm doing. And then, yeah, I use a CLA wall, the compressor up here to kind of really bring it up front. It's like a really clean up front sound. And I feed them the reverb, so that's the without reverb. Keep light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. So you can say it sound like you're in a big, you know, concert stadium. That's what I like, because I love going to concerts and just hearing that sound. So that's what I did with backups. You know, I got rid of some sibilants to clean it up, so there's no problems at the end. Got rid of some more low end, and then I use Vocal Writer. So Vocal Writer here is an awesome plugin. It basically rides your voice, it listens to your voice, and it rides it like up and down. So pretty much it's like as if someone's sitting on the console and kind of playing with their voice. If they're singing low, it goes you make it louder. If it's singing too loud, you bring it down. But I use it almost like a compressor, so I could kind of tame the voice a little bit, but it doesn't work like a compressor because it doesn't squash the sound. It grabs the natural of the voice, and it just kind of keeps it up and down. So therefore I love this. It's part of my favorite plugin for vocals. So I did that to kind of get the vocals to really sound back. And then for the lead vocals, lastly, you know, I do use an auto-tune to kind of clean it up. I feel like without auto-tune, it just doesn't sound, there's just it just doesn't sound smooth, and it flows with the music, because everything else is like perfectly in sync. But sometimes there's little pops or little noise that's slightly off, and I use it to kind of bounce me right in place to sound really studialized, and I love it. Then I use, you know, the CLA mix hub, and I use this to get the grit, you know, the distortion out of it, and then roll some low end and pop some top in. And, you know, I clean up a lot of some of the mid-range, kind of figure out what's wrong. And then this is kind of the muddiness out of my voice, so I get that out of the way. And then, let's see, maybe I can play it. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise. Yep, and I'm compressing a little bit. I'm doing a lot of serious compressions on out there. My favorite vocal compressor. Yep. Compressor there, and then I smooth it out with this CLA two-way. I don't always do this, but sometimes I do. I do it just to smooth it out a little bit. This compressor compared to the 76. 76, I like it because it really puts the voice up front. What I'm talking about is this one it's a little more edgier, it brings it up front, but this one smooths it out. So for this song, I felt like for the color of it, I wanted to smooth out my voice a little bit. And then I add some sibilants.
Waymaker, miracle
No, I didn't add sibilants, but like this plugin.
Darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, thy.
Well, it's really subtle, but it cleans up after when you go into the master stage, you boosting some of the highs, and so it happens. So pretty much my last plugin, what I like to use is a C6 on the Volsa, and this is what I love, multi-band compression. As you can see here, it's getting rid of some low end. I set my thresholds, so some of the pops, because I use this mic as my vocal mic, and sometimes I'm singing close to it to kind of get more of the live feel, because in the live you're singing close, and especially sometimes when I'm playing guitar, you don't want to have any mic bleed. But this helps, clean up when you're eating the mic. And then right here is about 250. That's where I'm kind of cleaning up the mud out of my voice. When you're singing close, the proximity effect, that's where I clean it up a little bit. But yeah, so when you're singing low, it brings it down. When you sing it high, it doesn't compress it so much. But let's go back to the verse.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper.
So it just kind of cleans it up a little bit, And then I add some top end, and I cut off some low. So this plugin, I like it a lot. I use it sometime towards the end to really balance the voice. Got rid of some more low end, and then, like I said, I ran the vocal writer. So what I do is that as you can see here, there's these sends are here, vocal writer sends. I send all that a signal, and I send it through this channel, so I can choose the music. So as the music is playing louder, this will know how to adjust to make the voice a little louder or a little bit lower. When it's quieter, it kind of tames it, so it rides the voice.
Waymaker, miracle.
So let's listen to the whole mix. Let's do it here. So it just rides it, I always do about -18 just to kind of get that perfect RMS, which is kind of so I can use the fader instead. So that's what I did there, and then I always parallel my vocals, my lead vocals. So just smashing it to get more. I use the rock my vocal setting, and just really quick and just eats the voice, and then I get rid of some low end just in case it builds up. And this is what I'm using for effects. This is where I use a little more different reverbs for the lead vocal. So I add this one to smooth it out. This is where it sounds flat.
Promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God,
by the Abbey Road Chambers.
that is who you are.
Just gives it more of a smooth, darker tone, a little more of the high end. Just give it a little more space, and then I'll glue it with the rest of it.
Miracle worker, promise
Just gives it more of the ambient space.
Darkness, my God.
And then lastly, I use a delay. So this delay, I believe, is just the long delays that, let's say for this in the beginning,
You are here,
you could just throw it. So I automate it. That's why I like this
I
plugin.
worship you.
Oh, actually.
I worship you.
Okay, there you go. Sorry, you're hearing the 8th delay.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you.
Well, I think I just did on the
You are here,
there you go.
moving in our
And then I use the 8th delay, and I add it on certain parts, like in the verse here.
every heart. I worship you. I worship you, Lord.
So over here, I'm using a dotted 8th delay. I change it. Sometimes it goes 8th, sometimes dot. But
Every heart. I worship you.
so I do that. So it just has a lot of, like, when I'm singing that part, it just has a lot of different effects. All right, now you should be able to hear it.
And you're mending
as you can see there, it turns off. So the eighth delay, I kind of use it, as like a sauce to add, so we get different multiple. But I like using the longer quarter delay, so I can kind of delay the longer parts.
Promise keep light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker. Promise keep light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are.
Yeah, so that's what I did for this song. I'll put it here, and I'll solo each instrument as I add it, so you can kind of see how it goes. So here we go. This will be the last thing I'll do. Start with the drums. That's how the drum sounds like. Then I added the bass. Pads, keyboard. Acoustic as a percussive. Yep. Electric guitars. Backup vocals. Crowd vocals. Lead vocals. And then my mix down plugin. As you can see, I'm on -3. And then here, like I said, I sidechain my vocals to the rest of the mix to cut a pocket. See how it cuts in on the voice. Kind of to show you what I did with each track, and like I said, how I mix a worship song is the vocals is always up front, lead vocals, and then you have your backups. Vocals are really important in a worship song. It depends on the it depends on the song, but for me, I like electric guitars. I grew up on Hillsong electric guitars. I use acoustic as a percussive instrument. I just like that click. And the pads and the keyboards are backgrounds. I make space for them. They're kind of like in the back. And the drums, me personally, I like louder drums. It just depends on the song, but for me, when I do my mixes, I try to make the drums just really up front, but it's still behind the vocals, and I love the pop of it. So it's a little bit flavor too, that's kind of what I like. It's kind of like how I like to mix a worship song and how I see it as a big picture. And then I show you one by one, but usually what I like to do is that I see as a whole, and then I start adding things where I think needs help. And sometimes I add because it needs help, and sometimes I just do it because I like it, and it's simple as that. And so this is my mix stage. And then I send it to my mastering, as you can see here, and then I create a track of it. I print it, and then I create a track. And yeah, that's how I mix this worship song. And I hopefully this helped you. If you have any questions or you want to see anything else on this channel and how my workflow is, I plan to continue more videos like this. But I wanted to just show you just. I think in the future videos I might do like maybe just like how to do vocals or how to do this and this and that, but instead of doing a whole mix like this. But this one I wanted to show you the whole mix, so you just kind of see an overview of everything I did. So I think that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up. You like it. Like I said, if you want to know anything else with this and I can help with, I can share, leave it in the comments. Or if you want to see a certain video of how I do something here, let me know, and maybe I'll start creating more videos like this and to help you create if you're interested in audio production. And hopefully this can inspires you and encourages you to, go out and be a light and use your gifts to glorify God in everything you do. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to my audio production series, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later.